and believe me, the art market is very conservative and doesn't like to work with tech. So the fact that they embrace our technology says something.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Nanne Dekking, founder and CEO of Artory. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting founders from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Nanne from Artory. All right, hey everybody, I'm here today with Nanne Dekking, founder and CEO at Artory. Nanne, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Tanner. I'm here in New York City at my office at 56th and Lexington. Great to be with you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm excited to chat. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you to building Artory?
Sure. Well, I'm Nanne Dekking. I'm an art historian. Born and raised in the Netherlands, studied in the Netherlands and moved to New York in 96. Actually to start a small company called Nanne Dekking Fine Arts. And what we did with that company was actually to advise people what kind of art to buy, and especially to look at were there any kind of problems with the kind of art that my clients were interested in. And the problems could be such things as provenance issues, attribution issues, etc. So I became an advisor at sort of the higher echelon of the art market, very much looking to do due diligence to make sure that people would buy art, not only because they liked the art, but also to make sure that there was clean title to sell, for example. So that was 96 in New York. I was lucky, I had a wonderful career in the art market. I'm actually a specialist in French Impressionist art. And when you're a specialist in French Impressionist art, you're basically already dealing with the higher echelon of the art market. And I worked at several companies within the art market, one of them being the Wildenstein Gallery, which in those days was the gallery where basically the most important Impressionist arts were still available, artworks were still available. And in my last job in the art market, I was vice chairman at Sotheby's, the auction house, in charge of the global private sales, so all the big sales that were done outside of the auction room. So very much someone from the art market, very much interested in art. And I really believe that having worked, it's hard, I don't really want to reveal it, but I have to work in that space for decades. I'm not that young anymore. I built up a lot of experience in understanding what are the attributes that create value for an artwork, right? I mean, whatever we're going to discuss now in this conversation with you, it's always about value creation and what creates value for a more complicated asset like art, fine art. So that's also the reason why Artory came about. I was very fortunate to have found a very big client, and this is public knowledge because usually, of course, you don't talk about clients. But one of the founders of SAP, Hasso Plattner, became very much interested in French Impressionists, and he built up a large collection. And especially in the early days, I was very much instrumental in building up that collection, which is actually currently all publicly displayed in a museum that he built in Potsdam outside of Berlin. And he was the one who said, Nanne, there is something about your market that is uncommon if I compare it to any other market, because it's not really transparent. There's a lot of information that you share with me only at the moment of the sale. Just to give you an example, whenever anyone who would buy an artwork from me would tell me, Nanne, I'm interested in, for example, a Monet, I would do a lot of research to make sure that I would find independent sources that would actually help me in telling the story about the artwork. Why is it valuable? It's valuable because there are public records, like the Metropolitan Museum had to work on display, or very famous scholars wrote about the piece, or there are even beautiful old photographs of the day that it was exhibited for the first time. All these kind of independent sources helped to contribute the value of such a piece and to make the sale easier, so to say, and to make the client understand why he or she should actually buy the work. And that led, long story short, we're going to talk more about it, but just to wrap it up for now for the intro, is it was Hasso Plattner and people from his ecosystem who told me, now there's a new kind of technology called blockchain technology, and it actually creates immutable records. And if you really want to create a market that people who don't necessarily understand all the dynamics of the art market, and if you want new people to engage with that art market, it could actually be a great way to start what Hasso always called a repository of trusted artworks, where all that trust information is recorded, can be seen by those who have permission to look at permission-based access. And that started Artory. We started to create a repository of trusted artworks. That's how it all started. And that was when was it? It's already 5.5 years ago.
How would you describe to someone who's brand new to Artory what you're building in its totality?
That's a big question. Although
Sure.
it's a big question, and in a way it's a short answer. What we do is we use tokenization technology, blockchain technology, to create records, digital records with trust information. And the trust information always has to come from one of the players in the art market, or very much an independent player in the art market, that is willing to create the information, right? We just scoop up the information. Artory as such doesn't create information. We work with a partner network, and the partner signs off on the information, and it's the partner who makes the statements, which I think is really important. We don't want to have any vested interest in saying Artory claims that this artwork is a trusted artwork. It's much more important to have a statement created by Christie's or Sotheby's or Winston Art Group. We're definitely going to talk about Winston Art Group, the largest independent art appraisal firm in this country. Is you want to have a vetting partner, so to say, who speaks out and says, we've done all the due diligence and we sign off on that information. So again, it all comes back to, and don't believe me, there were many tweaks when we started Artory in the whole product creation. Of course, you change course, but one thing we never change is to stand behind the concept of creating a repository of trusted artworks, and that we do using technology. We use a huge database. I definitely want to talk about the database that Artory has, and a network of trusted partners. So that's what we do.
So I want to dig into a couple of those aspects you mentioned, but maybe would just love to set the stage with this question first, where I read a recent Forbes piece where you said you either make the artwork tradable or you fractionalize it, tokenize it, and make the tokens tradable. That's completely transparent. Otherwise, the market won't take off. So I think my question was, could you untangle further maybe just some of the impacts, maybe to marketplace liquidity or maybe to even ethics, when marketplace transparency is facilitated through technology?
Right. I mean, there are a few elements here, right? I mean, as you already notice, I very much believe in creating transparency by not touting your technology, but by touting the knowledge of the people who use your technology. That's on the content side. You know, it's very easy to say that art is an uncorrelated asset class, that, let's say, the top 100 artworks outperform the S&P 500. That is all relative. Without real knowledge about that underlying asset class, in this case, fine art, and actually knowing that everybody knows listening here that the Picasso is definitely one of the best performing artists in the world, it doesn't mean that every Picasso will outperform the S&P 500. So there it's about knowledge, domain expertise. Then you get the technology. And if it comes to fractionalization and tokenization, I'm very much afraid that people talk about fractionalization, that as such it would create more credibility for an underlying asset. I've seen artworks being tokenized, fractionalized, attempts to trade artworks in a fractionalized way, that the art market as such, or me when I was in the art market, would not touch. I would not touch that kind of artwork because I know that it's most likely not the kind of Picasso that I would sell to a client. And why would you even think about fractionalization of a Picasso when it's not good enough by the already existing trade to sell it, right? That's what really is my concern with these kind of initiatives. And what I meant with the tokenization part is, and the tradability of tokens, again, also there, you need to make sure, look what happened to the implosion of cryptocurrency. You need to be able to surround yourself by an ecosystem that has a big chance of success. We all know secondary trading of tokens is not a magical things that all of a sudden will start to happen. You need to tap into the right kind of tradable assets, the right kind of technology, and you need to make sure that the people promising you that a physical asset like art can be traded in a digital way, that they have the right network on their end. Artory can bring in huge technology which is understood by the art market. And believe me, the art market is very conservative and doesn't like to work with tech. So the fact that they embrace our technology says something. But on the tokenization part and the tradability part, I expect from a future partner, so to say, on the trading side, the same kind of network that you can together create a completely new, let's say, digital rails to create a new way of trading. So that's not in short. It's not a short answer, but that's what I meant with what I said in Forbes.
Yeah, that's great. So let's hone into maybe just here early on. I'm curious, what are the most common use cases for Artory for the significant names in the art market you work with, for example, like Christie's or Sotheby's, Winston, etc. What are they looking to Artory for assistance with?
Very much for additional reassurance that the artworks or collectibles that are being traded are being trusted, so to say. We add a new level of trust. Artory was the first company in the world that actually tokenized an auction. There was the Epsworth sale. It's already 4 years ago 3 years ago at Christie's, that one of the largest collections of American art was sold. It was a collection owned by the Epsworth family, and they sold that entire collection. And it was actually the seller who said, I want a level of tokenization. I want to make sure that all the trust information that comes from my family, the fact that my family collected it, and all the expertise from Christie's, all the research they'd done on all these pieces, like Edward Hopper and you name it, it was a really important collection, that there is an additional reassurance that all that information now lives on the blockchain and that immutable record creation took place. There was another level that the Epsworth family liked as well, is that in perpetuity, you can see that all these artworks were once in the Epsworth collection. By the way, a famous collector is also another attribute of value creation. So it's very much about creating reassurance for buyers that Artory can add an extra level of credibility, because a statement is being created that can be seen by many more people than just a new buyer. And if I may, Tanner, one of the really good examples of what we've done for an auction house, I would say, is, for Sotheby's, we created the first token of an old master painting of a Botticelli. But only 2 months ago or 3 months ago at Christie's, we collaborated with Christie's for a sale of Galerie Steinitz. And Galerie Steinitz is a very renowned gallery in Paris, and they sell decorative art, mostly antique 18th century pieces, very often with royal provenance and all that from the French kings. And they sold some of their really very good works through Christie's, and they called it, the sale itself got the name Provenance Revealed, meaning that if, let's say, an 18th century desk has been in the collection of Marie Antoinette, and there's even a stamp on that desk that makes sure that you even know from which palace or house of Marie Antoinette the desk originally was made for or came from, that of course adds a lot of reassurance and is a huge value creator for that desk, because it says a lot about the authenticity. And for that, it was their idea to use Artory, and all the statements created by the expertise team of Christie's and all the expertise of Steinitz now lives in a token. And all that trust information can either live in the digital wallet from the new owner. And as you know, not many people, especially not people collecting 18th century art, have already a digital wallet, but Christie's also has a digital wallet in place for these owners. And the tokens that we have created with all that trust information lives in a digital wallet. So I think that's a beautiful example of working with an auction house and giving more reassurance of trust information that has been created.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about the broader impact of Web3 on the art market over the past several years? And you've touched on this a decent amount already, but I'm curious if there's anything that kind of explicitly put this question you might add about what's changed or even what stayed the same despite some of these, some of the broader adoption of Web3.
The exciting, what really excites me today is that so many people start to understand that we're heading towards a token-based economics. And my little task in that whole ecosystem is that I really believe that art, fine art, and collectibles deserve a serious place in this new way of digital trading. And that I believe that people are looking at the right kind of assets to tokenize. What kind of assets can actually be tradable in a different way? And if you then look at fine art, trillions of fine art lives in people's houses is actually not traded. There's only $65 billion of art traded a year, which makes it not a very big market. But one of the main concerns of people owning art is that there's a lack of liquidity. It's not like a house that you can take a mortgage. And that's where I believe digital trading or Web3 ultimately will play a big role. And that's also the reason why we try to do this also in such a regulatory correct way, that we try to surround ourselves with best-in-class institutional players who can help to unlock liquidity in this asset class. So one of the biggest proofs of concept of everything we've done so far as a company is the fact that we're creating art funds that ultimately can be traded, can be invested in through tokens. You may have seen that we already created an art fund through a joint venture with Winston Art Group. Winston Art Group is, as I just said, it's one of the biggest art appraisal firms in the world. They appraise $10 billion of arts a year. They work for 30% of the biggest art buyers in the world. They have a huge network and huge domain expertise if it comes not only to appraise fine art, but also to negotiate very good terms with auction houses when they act on behalf of their clients, etc. So Winston Art Group is sourcing art for these art funds. And that is going to be a very interesting concept because we're creating an art fund where every investor, future investor, will really understand that all the due diligence has been done. There's, of course, apart from Winston Art Group, there's also an independent appraisal firm involved, right? You want to make sure that financially minded people will understand that everything has been done to understand what is the actual potential value of this piece, what can be the potential value in 4 to 5 years from now. And these art funds, the Artory Winston art funds, there we use our technology. We use our database. Artory has the largest transaction database, historical transaction, going back to the 80s, where for a lot of art you can actually make you can make a risk analysis. So let's say this specific artist, RYY, how often has it been traded? What has happened over the last 5 years? In which countries is it traded the most? So you can make a much more, let's say, data-driven decision to source art, and also you can provide potential investors with many more data to see what is the potential of an art fund like this. And one of the really important things is Tanner, if you look at risk mitigation, I believe if you want to entice a new group of institutional investors to buy tokens into an art fund, by the way, Securitize, the platform, is offering our art funds in a tokenized way, so you can buy tokens into this art fund. But again, back to the underlying asset, what we did together with Winston is to create a very balanced portfolio of artworks. Let's not invest in one artwork. There's always a risk involved when you buy just into one particular asset. So you have to make sure that you create a very balanced portfolio, and all based on expertise, knowledge of the market, access to the right pieces for the right price, understanding when to sell. And what the Winston advisors have created is an art fund where emerging artists, young artists, they have the chance to go up 20, 30 times, 30 times in price. Whereas you also want to make sure that you have some anchor pieces in place of the more blue chip art that sort of usually stay pretty much at the same price level and go up a little bit in price consistently a year. So risk mitigation takes also very much place at the level of really understanding the asset and to make sure that you can explain to new investors, don't take too many risks. It's a new asset class. There's a lot of information that you can already get from a very big market player as Winston Art Group. And that's the way that we try to create a proposition that will be understood by ultimately financial partners, and of course make this kind of asset class ripe for digital trading and for Web3.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay. This is so much I didn't know about what was possible in kind of the traditional art world. So maybe shifting gears here just a little bit, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your personal philosophy towards company building, where as you built Artory from the ground up, what were some of the key lessons along the way that have propelled Artory to the success it's experienced thus far?
Wow, what a question. Well, one thing I've learned, Tanner, is I believe when I started that I was maybe too much of a missionary. I so much believed in what we were doing with Artory, that creating immutable records of trust information would actually really benefit the art market. And I didn't, I wasn't open enough to understand that people don't necessarily understand new technology. People, the art market as such is not ready for disruption, right? I mean, you don't disrupt a market. I believe with real knowledge of a market, you can actually work together with the art market and look at new opportunities. I think I was a little bit too fast with my company to explain to the market, this is great technology, it will help you, so use it, without understanding that they may believe that we were trying to create our own marketplace, right? Because you get a lot of trust information and not everybody understands that when you use blockchain technology, when you use encryption, that even Artory very often cannot even read the trust information that's being created. So, yeah, I think at that level, we were way too optimistic when we started. And I also believe we started, to that respect, maybe a little bit too early. What helped us a lot is when the NFT as an art form, when NFTs all of a sudden started to become popular as a collecting category, and people started to believe that an NFT, the non-fungible token, that the technology was actually an artwork, without understanding that the underlying technology is not an artwork at all. It's just whatever an artist wants to add to the technology, like a reel or images, etc., that can make it an artwork. But it was a moment, like 2 years ago, that people started to realize, so Artory is using that technology, although their trust information, everything they capture, doesn't represent a digital artwork or just a digital visual or a reel, but their trust information refers to an actual physical artwork, to one single physical artwork. And that was a game changer, I have to say.
Okay, so 2 last questions here. First question, I'd be curious what your most generalizable advice for founders building in the Web3 space might be.
Well, first of all, I admire any founder because I have learned how complicated it is to actually start a company, especially when you believe in new technology and new kind of trading opportunities. So guys, ladies and gentlemen, I love you, but what a task. But what I have learned is, and what I really could advise everyone strongly is, don't believe in miracles. The fact that digital trading is coming our way and that all kind of digital trading technologically will be possible, try to keep it real. Go back to what am I? Listen, it's a kashpa in the end. We're trying to sell. We're trying to sell something, and we want to make sure that people don't lose money. So never forget the underlying asset. That's to my opinion the most important thing. Don't count on future digital trading. You know what my mistake was, that I believed, and that's the famous mistake you can make, right? I believed if only 1% of the people would create a digital token with us of their artwork, it makes so much sense, Tanner, but will people do it? No. So create a real use case where all your technology makes sense and that reflects your ecosystem. So for me, creating these art funds, we've accomplished a lot with the marketplace, but I believe to have a joint venture with a very respected independent art appraisal firm is very important, because everyone will understand. At least they do everything they can to make sure that the underlying asset is absolutely the right kind of underlying asset. And what I already said is, and then create the right kind of mix. So diversification to make sure that there's risk mitigation taking place. And then look, what is the regulatory framework? You know, we actually didn't immediately look only at the tokenized offerings. I'm very happy with Securitize, very professional team. They only work with accredited investors, and we all know how important that is as well. But we created the Master Fund, which is a Bermuda corporation, and which is completely regulated by the Bermuda Monetary Authority. And we even are an administered fund. It's administered by Apex, the Apex Group, which, as most people will know, is a very reputable fund administrator, one of the largest in the world. And you work with the right auditors. You have the right custodians in place to store the asset. And then you look at companies like, in our case, for example, we very much look at Tokeny as a potential. We very much are, of course, collaborating with Securitize. Very exciting to see what kind of investors come into the fund through Securitize, who all believe that one day such a thing as secondary trading of your tokens, of your investment, will be possible. But we have to realize it's a nascent industry, and we have to realize that only with credibility and with, I would say, the right kind of regulatory framework, we can create a new market. And it's coming. It's really coming.
Nanne, what is your team working on right now, and what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey?
Wow. Well, go to artory.com. That would be amazing. Then you see a lot of what we're doing, artory.com. If you really want to know everything about the art funds that we're creating together with the Winston Art Group, go to artory-winston, artory-winston.com. So a lot you can read about us. Currently, we're actually looking also to other assets, not only art, not only fine arts. There's a very exciting project that I can share really within a few weeks that concerns gemstones. So, you know, there's a lot of things you can do when you have the technology in place and the mindset in place to surround yourself with the right ecosystem, with people who can create trust information. And as I always say, data are key. I'm so happy that we made the decision 4 years ago to buy one of the largest data sets in the world at that time already of transaction data for art. It's actually used. We enhanced the data. We made them much more accessible, and we keep growing the data set. It's used by Claire McAndrew, who's one of the foremost data analytics in the art market, to create the Art Basel yearly art report, which is one of those art reports everyone in the art market looks like to see what is the status of the art market. So data is very important always, especially if we start looking at digital trading, if you look at secondary trading. I'm not saying that you can always create an automated kind of valuation of an artwork, but if you have enough data and you look at the art where enough transactions takes place, there's actually a big data set that you can use to even predict the valuation of an artwork moving forward, which for secondary trading is crucial.
Love it. Nanne, thank you so much for the time. I hope everyone checks out your website and follows along. And thanks so much for coming on the show. Have a great start to your weekend.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.